Hey, good morning. Just a little bit different approach we're going to take today. We're going to take a little bit longer time talking about some principles associated with returning an athlete back to participation and training and practice, and with certain sports and potentially competition. Typically we don't really address a lot of strategy openly. We like to keep that within our walls, but we feel like right now maybe we can all benefit from just thinking about a principles-based perspective when it comes to thinking about athletes returning from a time away. If you look at some of the research in a lot of different areas, especially in the medical community, obviously people create their strategy, they do their research and they produce findings, but then they disseminate to a lot of people. So that's kind of the approach we're taking here. Certainly not giving away trade secrets by any means, but just kind of addressing some things that we're seeing. Today, I want to address a principle-based approach to this whole thing. We want to address some potential pitfalls and some roadblocks that we're having. We want to introduce our plan, our perform and progress method, and then we want to kind of summarize it into maybe how this could work for us as a staff. If you look at kind of what we're going through right now, it's early in the spring, summer. We had athletes that we were all gone. We were all in isolation and in quarantine at home, and we all spent some time away from campus and from the training facility. So we had an idea, where everybody was. We'd like for them to be training at home, but we took the approach of once we returned, it was going to be conservative. Now that many of us are back on campus, what we're finding is, we're back integrated into team training, but depending on maybe testing results or contact tracing, we may have a single athlete or a group of athletes miss a period of time. So now what you're going to have is a team progressing as a whole amongst the plan, but then maybe individual athletes are a little bit further back, and we need to be able to address that and be able to bridge the gap from where our athletes, our guys and gals are that are progressing every day, and then the athletes that maybe had to go to isolation for a period of time or quarantine. We have to be able to catch them up to get where they need to be. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit. We do want to think about some things that, other things that maybe we may have to address. So we rely on some of our information and our metrics. When we have this situation, maybe the practices that we always are involved in are not as applicable. So for example, if I rely on maybe acute to chronic loading and progressing athletes based upon my AC ratios, and then I have an athlete disappear for a week or 10 days, now my acute load is 0, so how are we going to manage that? If I have different personnel groupings or position groups that have a lot of athletes down, and then some of my developmental athletes are having to step up to produce those reps, how are we managing that from a developmental perspective? Are the developmental athletes ready to handle those first team, second team reps? How are we managing that? There's a lot of things that we have to think about during this period of time, but that's kind of what we want to spend a little bit of time today. Certainly want to take it from 10,000 foot. It's going to be a principle-based approach here, and I want to continue to hammer that home. We want to think about principles in everything we're going to be doing. So you think about the different situations too that we're going to go through. In the past, everybody was quarantining. Okay, so we were all kind of on the same environmental perspective there. We were all doing the thing. Okay, now we're going to have athletes that are integrated into class, maybe on campus in-person classes. Some of us have classes that are asynchronous online, just Zoom per se, that we get to watch a recording. Some have to be on a computer at a certain time. Some people go into quarantine because of contact tracing. Others go into isolation, maybe because of a testing result. So there's a lot of different dynamics occurring, and we want to just make sure that we address that up front. So we are dealing with a lot of things. I mentioned a minute ago the idea of the principle-based approach. We're stealing a lot of this from some of the ideas within investing. Okay, so Ray Dalio, big-time investor and author, actually wrote a book called Principles, and a lot of what he talks about is, in the investing world, no matter how you may wish to invest, whatever your strategy may be, there's a lot of unknowns. Okay, there's a lot of unknowns of where the market may go. There's a lot of unknowns what may happen tomorrow, really. So our strategies for investing should be based upon a principle-based approach to allow me to protect myself, my assets, the direction of wherever my assets are going to go. So he introduces the idea of principles, and we all have to develop our own principles. So for us as coaches, for us as practitioners in this game, we need to develop some principles that can act as guideposts for us as we're going through this. So if something occurs, that I may not have prepared for, I'm not going to really worry too much because I have my principles to go back to. Okay, so if I'm rolling and everything's going good, and now I also get another curveball my way, I'm just going to go back to my principles. And I'm going to think about these principles in everything I do. So I'm not thinking about one single approach. I'm going to be thinking about what are the things that I believe in, what are the best things for our athletes in regard to a health and wellness perspective and performance. And then I want to make sure that I lean on that all the while we're remembering that, performance and health, they go parallel to a certain degree, but a certain degree we've really got to push to maximize performance, and pushing performance may take us a little bit away from the idea of always being healthy. We do need to push, and we need to strategically find ways to push, and we'll talk about that in just a second, okay? So when we think about our principles and what we're going through right now, we want to go through the 3P approach in this sense. We're going to plan, we're going to perform, and then we're going to progress. Plan, perform, and progress. We want to keep this in mind as our guidepost, just like we talked about with the principles, so that as we're going through a period of time, right now, fall 2020, a lot of ebbs and flows with personnel, with decisions that we're making, with scheduling. There's a lot of things going on. We want to follow these 3 guideposts to allow us to go in the right direction. Let's first start with planning. Okay? We'll first start with planning. The very first thing that we need to do within planning, and what we're going to recommend, is enlist whole staff. That includes people on the tactical side, so coaches, assistant coaches, even off the field personnel that are heavy hitters in regard to the tactics of our game. That includes your performance staff, your strength and conditioning staff, your athletic training staffs, performance psychology, performance science. Bring everybody together, nutrition, everybody involved in this. Make sure we're all in the room so we can collaborate to create this plan. Okay? The next thing we want to do is ID goals. A lot of times our goals are driven from game demands. So what are the demands that I have to have as an athlete? And I'm thinking to myself right here as an athlete, what do I need to have to be successful, to be safe, and to be consistently producing on the field, on the court, on the ice, or on the track? What are the game demands, the competition demands? That's going to largely drive my goals. The next thing I want to go is just get a calendar. I'm going to organize my calendar. This goes back to planning. Have a plan, and we want to break this calendar into a couple aspects. I want to have an annual plan or a long-term plan. Okay, so an annual plan may speak to a year, where a multi-year plan may be maybe for a longer period of time, a developmental plan for an Olympic athlete, or in this case, maybe we're already in October potentially, or soon, so maybe it's just from the end of September, October to the end of the school year, whenever our competition. So we can adjust this, just think about this as a long-term plan. The next one would be a block plan. A block is essentially a segment of my annual plan that has a targeted direction. So think about on the field, during like a non-traditional season. So if I have spring sport, my non-traditional season may exist in the fall. I may have a competition here or there, but it's skill development maybe. It's on-field development. I'm working. That's my goal. Is I'm working on technical aspects of my game. Or in the weight room, let's say it's in the off season and it's away from any season at all, regardless, and we're concentrating on maximum strength. Okay, that block would be targeted toward that. It could be a myriad of things, but our block plan. Okay, the next one would be a week plan. That's pretty self-explanatory. Week plans are just basically weeks within the block plan. Oftentimes, within a block, they may be organized into a month. So we have, 4 weeks. You could put 2 blocks together. So now you have an 8-week block plan comprised of 8 or 4 week plans. And again, these week plans have goals and directions. Okay? And then finally is our daily plan. This could also be called your practice plan, your template, shell, whatever it may be, your daily plan. The biggest thing here within all of our planning is we have directions. What do I want to accomplish this year, this block, this week, today? And then once we think about that, everything complements one another. So let's just say this is my block here, and I really want week 3 to be heavy. That's really going to guide everything I do, because I know on the front end I need to ramp up and make sure they're ready to handle that demand, and on the back side I need to provide ample recovery. That could be nutrition, that could be time, that could be motivation, okay? But everything is complementary. We'll go next to the idea of an annual plan, and we'll break this down. Remember, this is all part of our plan, our perform, and our progress approach. So let's just take an annual plan, and we're not going to draw up 52 weeks. We're just going to draw up sections, and we're going to talk about how this all works together. Imagine I have a period of time, and these are weeks, let's say, and I take that all the way out as far as I need to go. And then this was going to just be broken up into chunks of time, each one of these designating 1 week, all the way out to whatever period of time I need, in this case, in. So now what I need, let's just go ahead and take this out 8 weeks, so we can kind of see how this complements one another. So now I got 8 weeks here. What I want to do next, after I have my structure, is I want to identify a specific date I'm working toward, or at least a time frame. So in this case right now, we don't have a lot of competitions right now in the fall. We're looking downrange to the spring. So what that date is, we're waiting right now, but we do know it's going to be a spring 21 competition. So I know I have X amount of weeks, okay? And I can work back, let's say that's January 1. I know I have X amount of weeks to January 1 when I need to start. Next thing I like to do personally, and again, this is just personal ideas, is down here at the bottom, if I extend these weeks down, I like to put down specific dates of important things. So right away, I'm going to put down holidays. Where is Christmas? Where is Thanksgiving? I'm going to put down, let's say, exams begin this week. Periods of time where there's high academic load, changes in all of our lives that can kind of change our readiness as athletes and may lead to some issues. So get that on the calendar. Identify when those high periods of high academic loading are, periods of just weird times. Where is Halloween? Where are university holidays? Put them on the calendar, wherever they exist for you. So now I know if I have maybe a holiday here, that's a period of time our athletes may be doing something, and they can't train on a specific day. This case this year was so awesome in the NCAA. Where is voting? We know that first Tuesday in November, we're not going to practice that. They put it on the calendar. We're essentially just managing everything now. Put everything on the calendar. And these are just examples. This is just an arbitrary calendar here. Okay? This is my annual plan. This is my long-term plan. I want to put everything onto this. I want to put everything on here. And I want to have everybody in the room, or at least put this in front of people so that they can add their areas. Maybe there's specific testing in here. Maybe strength conditioning has specific tests. Maybe certain position coaches want to focus on certain areas. Maybe we have a guest speaker we can put on the calendar. Okay, so the next thing in our hierarchy is we're going to focus on our block plan, or little chunk plan. Okay, so let's just take this case as our first block is this 4-week segment here. And we know that we're, let's say 20 weeks away from competition. Let's say we're 15 weeks, 10 weeks away from something I have to ramp up to. That's going to guide what this emphasis area is for. Okay, so right here, let's say this, we're going to, let's just say it's all about foundations, and we're just getting back in to training, getting back into practice, whatever it may be. Things that are complementary of foundational are your basic technical work. That could go on the field, on the ice, on the court. It could go in the weight room. What are the demands that I need to accomplish right here in these 4 weeks? After that, I'm thinking, what week in these 4 weeks do I want to push? Because as we mentioned earlier, that's the fine line between readiness and performance and even health and performance. Is there are times we have to back up to push readiness and health up. There's also time within elite athletics we need to push. Okay, we need to have really, really tough weeks to allow the organism, our athlete, ourselves to grow. Okay, so when we think about it in a block plan, we have 4 weeks. What week am I going to go heavy? What week am I going to go maybe medium light? When am I going to go medium, and when could I go light? Think about this, going back to the stock market example. It cannot just always be straight up. We need to find ways to make this thing kind of wave a little bit. So how do we put that on our calendar? That's kind of how everything organizes. Part of our plan 2 here is the use of technology. We're extremely blessed here to have technology. The ability to have wearables, the ability to track what we're doing. But I'll extend the idea of technology much further than a wearable. Okay, I'll take it into just organizing a sound recording program that organizes quality metrics as it pertains to volume and intensity. We talked about this kind of in the past. Make sure I can get this on camera. We want to organize things, what we're doing, into volume and intensity. So on this plan, so I organize this. If I organize my volume and intensity, it could be anything. I don't even have to rely, on a wearable, on a piece of technology. I can rely on my clipboard, taking minutes. Let's look at volume. In this case, it could be total minutes on the field. It could be reps. It could be sets. Whatever it may be. If we have the ability to have wearables, maybe that's player load. Maybe that's distance at different bands. Maybe total distance, high-speed distance, very high-speed distance, or even at more specific thresholds, above 17 miles an hour. Volume could be efforts, an effort count. It could be change of direction count. It could be anything that our metric has for us. It could be jumps, throws. Essentially, it's how much. Our intensity. Intensity could be an RPE. So how hard did the players perceive practice to be, training to be? You ask a question on a 10-point scale, with 1 being minimal, 10 being maximal, how hard did they perceive practice or training to be? They report, you put it in a spreadsheet, that gives you an estimate, roughly, of an intensity. You could couple this with total minutes, and that's going to get you RPE load, or Session RPE is another term for that. Okay, thinking about intensity too, it could be, maybe player load over minutes. So how much player load did I accumulate within an amount of time? It could be player load over yards. How much player load from catapult did I get per yard covered? Okay, but basically we're just boiling it down to volume and intensity. I can use my technology at this point. I can use clipboard to organize this. But basically what I'm doing at that point is within these weeks, and maybe even more within these days, what are my metrics? What are my metrics describing this? So now I'm organizing everything into this plan. I have my calendar. I have the direction I want to go. Now I have metrics identifying the plan. And then for metrics like RPE, for like force plate, like jump data. That's metrics that describe how the athletes are responding to the plan. So we were talking about how health and performance or performance and readiness may be sometimes inversely related. When I'm pushing to train, and I'm putting a load, maybe it's this week 3 this high, my readiness and performance may drop a little bit. So I'm pushing really hard, okay? I may not be ready, but as soon as I pull some of that stressor back, the athlete's gonna have the ability to compensate well above where we were. Is our data showing that? I know that this is a high plan, so my player load, where is this? My player load is gonna be high. I know that's there. If I put a line here for force plate, does the athlete's response match what I put on paper? Okay? If it does, you're going in the right direction. Okay? I plan that. I'm intentional about it. And because I plan to push this week, I also plan for this week to be light. Or vice versa. If I plan for this week to be light, I can't have a lot of lights together, so I got to ramp back up, come into the next period. Everything is complementary of one another. But you can see, this is how our technology and how our data, whatever data stream it is, fits right back into the plan. Okay? Plan, perform, progress. Okay? Next, we'll move into perform. Okay, so we've got a plan. We've organized our annual plan. We've seen the levels, the long-term plan, the block plan, the week plan, the day plans. We have goals and how they fit in. We have our metrics from whatever data source we have. It could be clipboard metrics. It could be athlete wearables. You see how they fit in. They're describing the plan, and they're describing the athlete's response to the plan. The next thing we do is we're going to implement our plan. We'll call this perform. This is the exciting part. Okay, we're going to be able to actually practice. We're going to be able to train. We've got our plan, long term, the vision, the direction we're going. Let's go ahead and do it. Okay. A couple things we're going to talk about here is being a teacher first, and that comes with a lot of different areas. Being creative, and then keeping in mind that it's okay to adjust within the teaching plan. Okay. So the first thing is I want to be a teacher. Let's go some blue. Be a teacher. Understand, if athletes are maybe away from campus for a period of time, or if we've been in and out because of whatever reason it could be, get back to the basics. We're having really great conversations on our lunchtime conversations during performance school, which is essentially just a collaboration of people, elite people around campus, just kind of talking about their area and how it relates to performance. And one of the things that came up in our first one is in times like this, where we don't necessarily know the end point, the key is to focus on fundamentals, focus on a skill, focus on maybe weakness areas that we can clean up with foundational skills and fundamentals. Okay? But as a teacher, a couple things come to mind. I want to instruct. I want to instruct my athletes. I want to give them specific feedback on what's going on. I want to give them feedback of where they are, and I want to be honest. I want to be intentional and close to them as I'm giving feedback, and then I want to step back and allow them to perform. Okay? I want to always make sure I'm explaining exactly what we're doing. Now, the neat thing here too is we're experiencing some smaller groups at times. What an amazing opportunity to give unique feedback that we would not be able to do in a normal year when we have a full squad. Okay? The second is I want to differentiate instruction. This comes straight from the education literature, where we talk about as teachers, we have to change the way I teach to create a message that can be received by everybody. So as a coach, I'm on the field, I'm on the court, I'm on the ice, I'm on the track, whatever it is, I need to differentiate my instruction to this point for all the different learners, auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners, but also have to be able to differentiate my instruction for the kid that's been there all along and the kid that's doing some work now for the first time in a period of time. So now I'm speaking to a lot of different audiences. I have to have the ability to talk to different people, to prescribe maybe different plans for people. I have to have the ability also to say, hey, keep going, but you, come on over here, we're going to do some remediatory work later. I need to have the ability, and this is the hardest thing too, is to say, you know what, man, like, you're done for the day. Good job today. We got good work, but you're done today. Because I'm not going to do something today that's going to negate my ability to do something tomorrow, unless it's in the plan. I have to have the ability to differentiate instruction. Okay? I have to be creative with drill design. Small groups, unique configurations, facility demands. We're going to have to be very unique, creative with how we design our practice plans. We're just going to have to lean on things that we've done in the past. Find ways to accomplish the same goal, whether physically, tactically, within your plan. You know, it doesn't matter if we're on turf versus being outside per se. It doesn't matter if we're going half the team, half the field. It doesn't matter. Let's organize it with creating specific things complementary of what the game demands are within just a unique situation. I could change the rules. I could change the overall setup of things. It really doesn't matter. I just need to be able to be creative. Another thing too is I want to be able to manage, and this kind of goes with this, I want to manage small groups. This is especially true for teams that have a large roster size, or large position groups, or let's say I have a bunch of infielders, or I have a bunch of sprinters, or within the field sports, if I have a bunch of forwards that do a specific skill or a drill, if I now take that group and reduce it, I can't keep the same work-to-rest ratios. I can't have the same amount of reps potentially. I need to manage this, because if I keep the same amount of minutes, or I keep the same amount of overall workload for the mass, I may give one single athlete maybe too much dose of that work. So I need to be able to be creative with that. And that can even be, if I'm going offense versus defense, maybe it's just go offense on air potentially one time. Or maybe I'm matching different athletes up in different positions, working crossover skills, whatever it may be. And again, understand completely, this is largely dependent on the sport, on the scheme, on the developmental level of our athletes. If I have a bunch of youngsters out there and I'm trying to teach specific skills associated with a sport, I don't want to put them with a veteran athlete, because it's just not a good match. But being creative in size of field, excuse me, the rules or the constraints that I'm putting on the actual task at hand, that can really help. But as we're teachers, man, as we're teachers, I need to be able to instruct in everything that I do. Be able to differentiate my instruction throughout everything. Be creative with drill design, and along that, manage our small groups. And I want to throw this in here too. This is not really a part of this list. We should never use physical activity for punishment in really any situation at all, but even more so now. Like there's no place really for that right now because I don't want to add things that I can't measure to the plan. Okay, so I don't want to actively produce an issue with an athlete by adding more stress to them when we're already stressed, or when we have a small group of athletes training and available. I don't want to add undue training load to an athlete just to punish. Okay, so I want to find creative ways to do that. You know, there's ways we can all learn from things. We're not all perfect. What are some ways that we can take it, reinforce or change behavior without physical punishment? Keep that in mind. Okay, now we're progressing. We're going to progress. So we have planned, we've performed. Now what we're going to do is go into progressing. Put that back down. Progress. Number one thing we want to do following the session. Let's get a debrief. That could be with coaches. That could include strength conditioning staff, athletic training staff, all support staff. It could include whatever the dynamics are within your team. Include those people. Now here's the neat thing. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one sit down in a coach's office. Zoom is beautiful because it's afforded us the ability to do things that we've never been able to do at home, separate. You know, we could Zoom conference call, debrief, break it down. It could be a simple report. I could put information on here where different people fill things in. Now everybody's abreast of what's going on. It could be just organizing a once-a-week conversation, but putting people in the loop about what's going on will allow feedback from different places. Okay? The next thing is I always want to think personnel. Okay? Our team is an organism. It's comprised of a bunch of different personnel ranging from athletes to staff to supporters. Always keep the person at the forefront of this organism. So we're thinking personnel. It could be looking at depth charts, daily, weekly, whatever fits the ecosystem of your team. We're thinking about status potentially. You know, who's available, who's not. You know, who's coming back from injury. If we have an athlete that's been away for a period of time, how are we integrating them back in? What are the dynamics of one or the whole? Or we're having conversations about personnel, even back into our annual plan. You know, I have a plan. I know where I need to go. I know what weeks are hard. I know what weeks are light. I know what days are hard. I know what days are light. How are these guys and gals responding to the plan? Think about personnel. At this point, this is a great opportunity to use your metrics. Okay? Get everybody fluent in the language that we're using. If we're a team that has the ability to use catapult or wellness metrics or WHOOP or RPE, let's talk about it. Let's bring it in here and let that be part of our language. Understand what player load is. Define player load as simply workload and start to understand the scale that that's measured on. RPE, if we're using a scale of 1 to 10, let's get everybody understanding that 5 is moderate. You know, let's use this as a part of our language. But us as coaches, we have to be deliberate at organizing, one, the operational definition of certain language we use, and two, integrating it into our daily and weekly schedule so it's fluent amongst everybody on staff. Look at your metrics. Take your metrics from your technology, from the data you collect. Look how it fits back into the plan. Is it complementary? Okay? You know, do the metrics that I'm seeing from week to week, Does it complement the plan as a whole? Does it look from 2018, 19? How does it look compared to last year? What is the average of a week within a position group? How does that look compared to the past? Where am I trending? A lot of things like this can come into these metrics, and I will continue to go back. It doesn't have to be fancy. I don't have to use the entire gamut of data points that I can collect. Find 2 to 3 metrics that everybody feels comfortable with talking about with that describes the plan or the response to the plan, and that's going to put you right. Okay? Next one. The idea of ecological dynamics. I mentioned the team is an organism. The team unit is also an ecosystem. Okay, so when we look at some of the ecological dynamics literature, we organize this into 3 areas, and this is what we can integrate into our staff meeting. We can look at the task. What did the plan look like? Was it appropriate for the kids that were there? Was it appropriate for the athletes that have not been there? What were the constraints or the rules associated with specific drills? Did we organize them right? Did they go well? Did they go bad? All this is the task. The next one is the performer. Okay, that goes back to here where we're thinking personnel. How did our athletes react to what we gave them? Were they in a state of readiness? Were they a little tired? Were they coming from a certain area? What was the collective whole feeling like? What were the individuals like? Guide this by the performer. And then the last one is the environment. Okay? Were we inside? Were we outside? Were we on turf? Were we on natural grass? You know, were we training in a unique situation? Were we deliberately changing the environment to change the constraints to make the athletes make a decision and adjust? At the same time, how does this go back into my annual plan? Just things to think about. Ecological dynamics and thinking about these 3 areas. The tasks, the performer, and the environment can help guide a lot of conversations within our coaches and staff meetings. And I think this is a really important thing too. It goes back to personnel. Get a feel from the athletes. Goes back to personnel. Okay? Don't be afraid to ask the athletes, you know, how they're feeling. We have really, really smart athletes that understand the training process, understand the tactical aspects of the game. Let's ask them, you know, how'd you think today went? How's your progress going? You know, if someone's coming back from time away, ask them, how you feeling, man? Are you feeling okay today? You know, do you feel like we can go more? You can go less. Have conversations with our athletes. Key thing here before we move on. We mentioned personnel. 1, 2, 3 times. Here, okay? Personnel, personnel, personnel. We're always thinking about personnel. Okay? At the end of the day, when we look at what we're going through here, okay? There's really no rule book for this, and there's certainly no textbook that's really clean and easy to follow. Okay, so we're working on organizing principles. These are going to be different for every team, maybe even every unit within a team. Okay, but they're going to be able to drive the decisions we make, the plan that we create for our athletes. It starts with planning. Okay, have a plan, have a destination, even if it's broad. Completely understand that there's certain things that we just don't know yet. We may not know that for a period of time, but I know where I'm going. Now I'm going to work back. I'm going to start big, annual or long-term plan. I'm going to go to block plan, week plan, day plan, and then I'm going to measure responses of the athletes to my plan. The next one, I'm going to perform. Let's go. Let's go out. Let's do the plan. We're going to feel okay about adjusting if I have to within the plan, but I got a plan. It's well thought out. Engaged everybody within the staff. Let's do the plan. Let's go play. And the next one, I'm going to progress. I'm thinking personnel, personnel, personnel. I'm looking at the plan. I'm articulating things that we maybe do really well. Looking at things that we can improve on. and we're reassessing and going back to our plan to plan the next thing. Okay, this is a principle-based approach. We're looking downrange. There's no rule book for this. How we organize our staff, our athletes right now, is kind of part of this entire process that we're going through. Okay, the key thing we'll leave you with: find a plan. What is that plan for us? What are maybe contingencies if I have to adjust that plan? Get ready, get out on the field, get on our venue, and let's participate. And then finally, let's make adjustments to make the plan better over time. We keep doing that over and over, we're going to be in a really good place.